Hey everyone, it's the Koopa Man. During December of last year, I did a video on the very first episode of The Simpsons, their Christmas special, Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire. In that video, I mentioned the concept of Flanderization, in that characters from The Simpsons over time were reduced to just single tropes exaggerated at a character's detriment. Examples I cited were Homer Simpson, Bart Simpson, Lisa Simpson, and of course, Ned Flanders himself. The sad truth is that this occurred because the writers were, even in The Simpsons' golden age, running out of ideas. They, or the networks telling them to do what people like most, will exaggerate their own characters to be even more of the traits that people expect. Homer Simpson became dumber as the seasons went on, Lisa became more of a mouthpiece for the writers' liberal views, Bart became more of a menace, and Ned Flanders became a straw man of what writers' view of the religious. Of course, this occurred to more than just these characters over the series in the way too long run, but it isn't just exclusive to The Simpsons. Today we're going to talk about examples of Flanderization and what could have been done to prevent it, so sit back and enjoy the show. Sharing the Sunday evening block on Fox was The Simpsons' longtime rival, Family Guy. Created by Seth MacFarlane as a raunchier alternative to The Simpsons, but also a nod to the old Norm Lear sitcom All in the Family, Family Guy showed the family of the Griffins in their shenanigans with their bumbling but well-meaning father Peter, his supportive but nasally wife Lois, and their children, the fat and somewhat slow-witted son Chris, their average-looking and attention-seeking daughter Meg, and their evil-talking baby Stewie, as well as their talking dog and obvious author self-insert Brian. The early seasons of Family Guy had the same tropes of cutaway gags, which is something that The Simpsons didn't offer on the regular, and it was focused more on the main family than the people around Quahog. However, Fox eventually canceled it, only to revive it after booming DVD sales and a successful syndication on Adult Swim. After that, however, the Flanderization began to set in. After the revival, the main family, as well as the secondary characters around them, became more parodies of their former selves. Peter became stupid to the point of being barely functional and a total sociopath. Lois became a horrible, horrible person. Meg started to resemble a desperate cry for attention with how much he was used as the Ross of the show. Chris started to become unhinged. Brian became Seth playing out his own self-loathing scenarios. And Stewie became gay. It's weird what they did with Stewie, honestly. Like with The Simpsons, this largely happened due to the writers no longer caring and just playing to the peanut gallery. In fact, Seth himself was completely checked out after he started working on the Orville, something the show itself lampshaded.
We now return to the Orville on Fox.
Why do you hate that show so much?
Because it's preventing me from doing my work here at Family Guy.
Oh, and just a heads up, go watch The Orville. I've only seen a handful of episodes, but it's really, really good. Fox, however, refused to put the show down, so they kept going. Speaking of shows that should have been put down a long time ago.
Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
Oh!
Remember when SpongeBob was still really good? I remember the day the first episode aired. I was, I think, 8, maybe 9? It doesn't matter. But this cartoon changed the face of Nickelodeon for a good reason. It was fun, clever, a bit cheeky. It was their answer to Animaniacs. However, after 3 seasons and a whole movie, series creator Steven Hillenburg left the show. After that, the quality started to slip, especially the characterization. Mr. Krabs went from a greedy but well-meaning boss to someone whose greed could challenge Larfleeze. Patrick Star became so stupid that it was a wonder how he was still alive. Squidward became even more of a jerk whenever he wasn't just an abuse victim. And SpongeBob himself went from a naive young man to a creepy stalker and man-child. That, and the Krusty Krab plots taking over the majority of the show, as well as the plots in the later seasons going really mean-spirited, if not outright absurd, it was a far cry from the first 3 seasons. Unfortunately, with the passing of Steven Hillenburg at the age of 57, the chances of the show ever getting good again, or the characters being their original selves, is non-existent. Heck, he returned for a few seasons, but the damage was already done, and it was just more so he can insert nostalgia-pandering fan service. Oh well. Even a more solid series like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic had a character, Rainbow Dash, who refused to prank Fluttershy because of how meek she is, pranked Fluttershy in a later season, kicking off in an episode plot. Flanderization isn't exclusive to cartoons, however. You may remember I mentioned Ross from Friends.
This is ancient Earth's most foolish program. Why does Ross, the largest friend, not simply eat the other 5?
Perhaps they are saving that for sweeps.
Friends as a TV sitcom was about 6, friends living in New York City with their unique lives and quirks about them. But over time, it became about 6 sociopaths who, if you remove the laugh track, look like total psychopaths. Especially Ross and Rachel. It was to the point where the main cast of Friends looked and did things even worse than the main cast of Seinfeld, a show that came out around the same time, whose main cast was supposed to be sort of sociopathic as it had a more cynical bent to it. Even Seinfeld itself wasn't safe from it, with the character of Kramer becoming more of an unbelievable goofball by the end, and the character of George becoming less the co-director Larry David self-insert and more like Daffy Duck, Elaine becoming more of a woman child, and Jerry himself becoming a cynical, sarcastic jerk. It's no wonder all 4 of them end up behind bars in the end of the series, and even then it feels like the world being way too cruel to them. That's right, the tone of the show itself got Flanderized. I can't make this up. Sesame Street's Elmo is another live-action, puppet action Flanderization, eventually taking over the whole of Sesame Street and being some sort of wacky cartoon character instead of just a regular monster kid. Speaking of Larry David and Elmo, though...
Over to Alfred, checking the weather and...
Not yet.
Wait. Oh my gosh, you love Elmo, don't you? Elmo, you okay?
Mr. Larry, Elmo liked you before.
Ask permission before you touch people, Larry.
Let's get back on the couch and let's talk about how you're feeling.
They would have canceled the show, Elmo, if it weren't last season.
All right.
Larry,
then.
you've gone too far this time.
Yes, Larry.
Somebody had to do it. Is anybody really surprised?
He's gonna sue y'all for the teaser. I'm gonna sue him for surplus.
I may have just talked about Elmo just so I can show everyone that was a real thing that happened. Moving on. While most of these examples happen in comedy writing, it's not exclusive to it. Take Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII. Over the years, he went from a somewhat aloof but ultimately good-hearted and a bit socially awkward wannabe soldier that we all know and love, to some sort of hot topic edgelord in the media that he was portrayed in, including media by Square Enix themselves. And then we come to Dragon Ball Super, and oh boy do I have quite the love-hate relationship with Dragon Ball Super. So, did you know Goku never kissed his wife? Yeah. According to Dragon Ball Super, this is 100% a fact and apparently, quote-unquote, totally in line with his character. So, let me explain. Toei always had a bit of a problem with flanderizing Dragon Ball characters and stuff like filler, particularly Son Goku himself. While Goku has 3 defining traits, that being his righteousness, his aloofness, and his stupidity, by the time Super was made in order to quote-unquote correct Goku back to being how he was in the original Dragon Ball manga, he was made incredibly stupid and aloof, to the point where he openly admitted to never having kissed his wife on the lips despite having 2 kids with her. It's not just Goku, but the entire Son family suffer from this. In the manga, Chi-Chi, Goku's wife, is very much about her son, Gohan, getting an education. But in the Dragon Ball filler in the anime, she is obsessed with it to the point that she is some sort of stereotype for an Asian tiger mom. Gohan in the anime and filler has a trait of him that was actually dropped from the manga of wanting to be a great scholar in order to make him, a regular kid, which makes him being too gentle to actually try to kill Cell in the later material really confusing. Even more confusing when in the Garlic Jr. filler arc, he very readily kills all of Garlic Jr.'s henchmen, and would have killed Garlic Jr. himself were he not immortal already. These are problems that Toriyama himself expressed, but was unspecific because of cultural differences in Japan. Really, the only family allowed to have actual character development in this story is the family of Prince Vegeta. Typical. Those Vegeta fanboys and their bowl cuts and their widow's peaks and their fancy swords. Sorry, I got distracted for a second. Anyway, the common cause of flanderization is almost always laziness and a lack of caring. Whenever writers are being forced to work on these stories, they begin to slip into these exaggerated traits and stereotypes, which just makes for an inferior product. And almost always, this is the case of series that go on for far, far too long. Nobody will argue The Simpsons and Family Guy should have ended years ago, but do we really need more seasons of Dragon Ball Super? Well, after the anime finally comes back and catches up with the manga at least? Or did Friends need to go on for as long as it did? Or Seinfeld, a show that advertises itself about being about nothing? In my opinion, the only cure to Flanderization in media is to end a series before it becomes stale. With the way media is nowadays with endless reboots and sequels and endless continuations, that's not something that's going to be happening anytime soon. But eventually, so much of what we love will fall for this curse of lazy writers that they'll have no choice but to come up with new ideas. I mean, again, look at the Orville. When Star Trek was old and played out and had fallen into being political propaganda for people who don't consume media, just blog about it on social media, the Orville did the same thing, but with an original twist in its own universe. And it is far more enjoyed and far more successful, even by its showrunner, Seth MacFarlane, to the point where he ditched his other projects to work on it. Believe it or not, people like new ideas, or even old ideas in a new package. Instead of selling us the same thing over and over again, Hollywood should be looking for the next big thing. But unfortunately, they're looking for ways to get us to vote the way they want us to, and are becoming the tyrants they portray everyone else as. My friend, KMDP, who helps me edit these scripts, had a theory of his own on the topic that he gave me permission to read out. Personally, I'd say the key to Flanderization is not letting a show go on too long, but having a clearly defined idea of who the character is, with what their positive and negative traits are, and what makes sense to throw at them, and not allowing your personal biases to get in the way of writing them. Like, One Piece has gone on for close to 30 years, and none of the cast have been Flanderized by Oda. But then we see shit like that clip from that one TV special I showed you, most certainly not written by Oda. For reference, the clip in question was of Luffy trying to eat a treasure chest. The person who wrote that obviously didn't have a good grasp on Luffy's character, and at the time this was a little understandable, and the TV special aired after the episode 52. One Piece had only been going on for about 3 years, and the anime had only been airing for 1 year. For context, episode 52 of One Piece was around the tail end of the Logtown arc, specifically right as Luffy was being executed. A lot of the negative traits of Ned Flanders spawned from the writer's own personal beef with Christianity. While in a vacuum this wouldn't be an issue, the Lovejoys are supposed to exist for that. The declining moral fortitude of the cast of Seinfeld, as well as Homer and the Griffins, spawns mostly from simple escalation, and it is a symptom of the show having gone on too long. When your edict is to push the envelope / subvert expectations for shock value / black comedy, it's kind of required. Essentially, those cases are a simple case of the slippery slope. Once the character does one morally reprehensible thing and gets away with it, the others will follow. Basically, the preventable cure for Flanderization is wisdom. Clearly set boundaries and honesty, which media types lack. Sanji is a character who in most other shows would have long since been Flanderized to hell, or, alternatively, have been whitewashed entirely. The worst thing he's ever done regarding his perversion is something that he was immediately punished for and was obviously supposed to be a moment of weakness that he pretty much immediately rectifies by removing the thing that gave him the temptation once its use was no longer required or beneficial. Oda obviously has no intention of removing or altering his love of women because that's a core aspect of his character. He has no intention of whitewashing it. However, it's never treated as the only aspect of the character that exists. I suppose you could say not treating characters as one-dimensional stereotypes also helps. Anyway, like time and tides, things always will change eventually. Only time will tell when we get less Flanderization and better writing and better structured stories. Until that day comes, this has been the Koopa Man. Leave a comment below of your least favorite examples of Flanderization in fiction, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe as it helps me with the ever-Flanderized algorithm. And until next time, game on.